Tax collectors. Who doesn't love to hate a tax collector? After all, you worked hard for your money, and the government takes it, and so many times when you see how they spend it, you cry because you say it's being wasted, and you worked so hard for that money. Now, tax collecting is part of the government. Without it, we wouldn't be able to run our countries, have our security forces and our military and all the services that we have that are provided by our government. So taxes aren't totally bad. However, no one likes to pay them. And taxes are not just something in the modern era. Taxes go back as far as we can see in history. Whenever there was a civil society and a government, people were taxed. And in the Gospels, there are a number of times that we read about taxes and tax collecting and tax collectors. And there was one tax collector that made very important history. And his name was Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector who lived at the very best of society. Oh yeah, he was a Jew, but he was despised by his fellow Jews because he was working for the Roman government, occupiers, and taking their money. And he was doing a pretty good job at it. Certainly he was making enough money to live in what in those days was considered a luxurious life. He had what he wanted. He lived in a good home. He had gorgeous clothes. He had everything he needed. Wanted to go out and have a good meal he could not afford to buy. He had it made. And he would sit there day after day in his little tax collecting booth, and he would take money from his fellow countrymen. And so he was truly despised. And one day, Jesus comes walking through the town, and he passes this tax collector booth. Inside, sitting there, is Matthew, taking money, getting richer. And Jesus just looks at Matthew and says, Matthew, come follow me. Now, obviously, Jesus wasn't looking at Matthew as a despised person. He wasn't looking at somebody who was either rich or poor. He was looking at the heart and soul of Matthew. And whatever that look did to Matthew, he went through an instantaneous transformation. At that moment, he knew that he was encountering Jesus, the man that's been walking around and he's heard about, and all these things that have happened because of him. And he doesn't know what to do but to get up, put his money on the counter, walk out the booth, lock the door, and follow Jesus. Yes, at that one moment, he had an encounter, and he responded to that encounter by giving his all. Now, the other apostles weren't too happy about this, because after all, didn't Jesus know he was a tax collector? He's one of the despicables, and now he's making him one of us? It was a conundrum for the apostles. But again, the apostles were young in this ministry, and they didn't really see the whole part of Jesus as being the forgiver and lover of everyone. Jesus didn't see the evil that was going on in Matthew's life. Oh yeah, he saw it, but he was looking beyond that. He was looking beyond to a soul he knew he could save. And so he was asking the apostles to accept Matthew in their group. And so they did. And Matthew, being a talented and educated guy, decided that he would take note and he would keep a journal of everything that happened during his trip with Jesus. And that journal happened to turn out to be a very marvelous, marvelous experience, because it became one of the 4 Synoptic Gospels. And once Jesus was crucified and after the resurrection, the little band of apostles set out to do their mission to carry the word further. And Matthew became an evangelist. So from being a tax collector to being the word of spreader of God, Matthew had a transformation. And so do we. we're all, in a sense, tax collectors. We're all, in a sense, people who don't really sometimes fit in. We're not perfect. But then Jesus walks by us, looks at us, looks straight to our soul, and calls us and says, "Come, follow me." Will we? Will you take that challenge? Will you be willing to give up everything, leave everything behind, as did Matthew in that little tax collector booth, and walk into a path you didn't know where it was going to take you? Yes, some point in our life we will all be encountering a call. It may not be as dramatic as Matthew's was or the apostles were, but there will be a call when you will be asked to follow Jesus, to leave behind what you have and go in a direction you do not know, surrendering to the unknown, knowing that God, in his goodness, will forgive you, will lead you, and loves you enough to know that nothing can hurt you, and that you are on the way to eternity. So, be a modern day Matthew and spread the word.